Raw diet for pit bulls. Raw diet for pit bulls is a controversial topic among pet owners. Some believe that raw food diets are suitable for their furry friend, while others think they can be dangerous and even toxic. But those who like the idea of getting a raw diet for their pit bull believe it helps them to keep them calm and happy. Raw food is great, but it's not for everyone. Here are some things to deliberate before you make the switch.
Disclaimer: the information provided in this series is not intended to replace the advice of a veterinarian.
Raw food versus kibble food. The difference between raw and kibble canned foods is that kibble canned food has been heated or processed at high temperatures. Raw food has not been cooked or processed. Therefore, it contains all the nutrients and enzymes. However, raw diets usually contain more fat than kibble, which can lead to obesity in your canine buddy. Raw food is easy to digest because it contains no filler like cornstarch or flour. It has no artificial colors or flavors, so it can help improve your pet's health and digestion and coat quality. Raw food is a good choice for dogs who are picky eaters. Some dogs don't like kibble because they aren't used to eating it or because of the texture, if they're eating canned food. But if you give them raw meaty bones and meaty chunks of real meat, they'll be happy campers. If your pit bull is younger than 2 years old, it's best to keep him on a constant diet of kibble or canned food. If he's older than 2 years old and still thriving, it may be time to consider transitioning him over to a raw diet. Dogs with sensitive stomachs may have issues digesting raw food if it's too much for them. If this is the case with your pit bull, we recommend feeding him his meals at home and adding some probiotics. Raw food is an excellent choice for your dog, but it can be expensive and time-consuming to prepare. Kibble is a better option as it doesn't require as much effort to prepare, and you can get raw food that is already cooked.
What do experts say about raw food for pit bulls?
Many experts believe that raw diets can be dangerous. Many experts agree on not recommending feeding them raw meat in any form, the reason being that it could lead to severe health problems. They recommend feeding a more balanced commercial diet that includes meat, fruit, and vegetables. The Humane Society of the United States says people should not feed their pooches raw meat or bones as they can carry harmful pathogens. If you are feeding your dog a raw meat and vegetable diet, it is important to know that there are no harmful bacteria in the meat, said Dr. Karen Becker, an animal behaviorist at the Humane Society of North Texas. You should always talk with your veterinarian about the best approach for your dog's health and well-being. However, she believes that some dogs can benefit from a raw diet if they have certain medical conditions like diabetes or allergies to other foods or ingredients in commercial kibble brands like chicken or beef. A raw diet is high in fat content and, therefore, rich in essential fatty acids, EFAs. EFAs are necessary for many functions in the body, including shiny skin, brain, and immune system health. I don't think the raw food diet is good for dogs at all, says veterinarian Lisa Freeman, DMV, PhD, DACVN in her article published in the Journal of the American Veterinary Association. Dr. Lisa says raw diets are also high in fat and calories, which can lead to obesity. If I was feeding my dog raw diet and I knew he was prone toward obesity, then I would feed him cooked meat or commercial low-fat diet instead.
What to feed pit bulls in a raw diet?
As mentioned in the previous 2 articles, species-appropriate pit bull nutrition consists of raw meats and bones, fish, eggs, and very small amounts of greens, herbs, veggies, and fruit. But what exactly should you feed? Raw meaty bones. Raw meaty bones, RMBs, comprise the main part of the diet. Why is it so important that you feed bones and not just meat? In a word, calcium. Dogs not only have specific calcium requirements, too much and too little can both cause problems, but they also require calcium and phosphorus in a ratio between 1 to 2. 1. Meat contains tiny amounts of calcium, but lots of phosphorus, while bones are high in calcium and contain a moderate amount of phosphorus. RMBs with the highest bone-to-meat levels, poultry wings, backs, and necks, deliver calcium and phosphorus in a ratio of roughly 1 to 1. If you feed a lot of bones that are meatier, chicken leg quarters or breasts, you'll need to add another calcium source to the diet. But don't worry, by giving eggs with the shells, you can feed even the meatiest bones without risk of unbalancing the diet.
Here's a list of some of the RMBs you can feed your pit bull.
Chicken, any part. Turkey, any part. Game hens, feed whole. Duck, any part. Pheasant, any part. Quail, feed whole. Rabbit, any part, but it's best to remove the stomach and intestines of wild rabbits due to the risk of parasites. ostrich and emu necks, ribs, and knuckles. Pork necks, ribs, shoulders, and tails. Lamb necks, ribs, and breasts. Oxtails.
Raw organ meat.
About 10% of your pit bull's diet should consist of raw organ meats. You can feed any inspected organ meat, but livers, kidneys, and hearts from chicken, turkey, lamb, and beef are usually the easiest to find. Chicken and turkey gizzards are also an option. Another great choice if you can find it is green tripe, not the bleached tripe available in supermarkets. Kidneys and especially livers are very rich and should not comprise more than half of your organ meat mix.
Raw muscle meat.
Most meat should be fed on the bone, but adding small amounts, 16 to 20 ounces a week, of boneless muscle meat to the diet either ground or in chunks is fine as long as you remember to feed the eggs with their shells. The main reason you may want to feed boneless muscle meat on occasion is that your pit bull needs some red meat in her diet, and if you can't find lamb RMBs or oxtails at an affordable price, ground beef may be your best bet for inexpensive red meat.
Raw fish.
Wild fish frequently contains parasites, so stick to farmed fish or wild fish species such as tuna and snapper that have a very low risk of parasites. When in doubt, look for raw fish that's recommended for sushi. Never feed raw salmon due to the risk of salmon poisoning disease, which is potentially fatal. Carp, catfish, and smelt can be fed on occasion but not at every fish meal because these species contain an enzyme that binds thiamine, vitamin B1. Fish that weigh less than half a pound can be fed whole heads, guts, and all. If you can't find affordable raw fish, it's okay to substitute canned mackerel, sardines, or tuna packed in spring water. Just make sure there aren't any unwanted additives. It's best to drain the fish before feeding to get rid of some of the salt.
Raw eggs.
Feed your pit bull a large raw egg with the shell 3 to 4 times a week. The egg's shell is about 95% calcium, which is needed to balance the excess phosphorus contained in the organ meats, boneless muscle meats, meatier RMBs, and the eggs themselves. How do you feed the shells? Wash them and leave them to dry for at least a day. Then grind them into a fine powder using one of those little electric coffee spice grinders or a mortar and pestle. Mix the egg shell powder with raw egg, ground meat, or cured veggies.
Veggies and fruit.
As mentioned in the first part of this series, dogs have no nutritional requirement for carbohydrates. Consequently, feeding veggies and fruit is optional. It's also a lot of work. Raw veggies and fruits need to be completely crushed in a food processor or juicer in order for your dog to be able to access their nutrients. If you want to feed veggies, make enough for several weeks and freeze in serving-sized containers. Then thaw as needed. So why would anyone go to the trouble of preparing a fruit and veggie meal if dogs have no need for it? These plant foods are very high in vitamins and minerals, and those are certainly beneficial. If you want to make a veggie mix for your pit bull, endive and romaine lettuce, parsley, bok choy, dandelion and mustard greens. Wheatgrass and other grasses, broccoli, squash, zucchini, carrots, celery, pears, and apples, without the core, are all good choices. Feed about a quarter cup 3 times a week.
Supplements.
Supplements are also entirely optional, but you may want to add some fish body oil, not liver oil, and vitamin E to your pit bull's diet. Many dogs enjoy omega-3 fish oil capsules so much that you can give them as a healthy treat between meals. If you're not feeding veggies, you might want to give a teaspoon of powdered greens or algae on occasion, but it's not essential.
Making the switch to a raw diet for pit bulls.
There are 2 methods for switching dogs to the species-appropriate diet. The first is to slowly start adding raw foods to your dog's diet, while you're still feeding kibble, though kibble and raw foods shouldn't be combined in the same meal. Gradually you feed less kibble and more raw until your dog is eating 100% raw. The second method is to make the switch quickly. Friday night you're still feeding commercial pet food, and Saturday morning you begin with raw meaty bones. In the vast majority of cases, this is the way to go. Even 12 and 13-year-olds who've been eating kibble their entire lives have been able to make the switch overnight without a problem. If you're considering switching your pit bull to a species-appropriate diet, I encourage you to educate yourself thoroughly until you are completely comfortable with the idea of feeding a home-prepared raw diet. Then make the switch. Your pit bull will thank you for it.